Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Takes me a lot to go way, way, way down in my soul and pull out that note. It's Prophet Jonathan, you know about these things. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. No, I am not wearing what do they call those things? No, I'm not wearing a wig. What's the other name that they have for those things that people put in their heads? Oh, sew in. No, I'm not wearing a sew in. Oh, no, I'm not wearing a lace front either. See, it all moves up there. This is my natural hair. And as you all know, I've been going through changes. Lord, have I been going through changes. But praise God. Hallelujah. Praise God. Hallelujah. It's coming back to its health. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful. I'm going to do another trim. This is Health, Wealth, and Wisdom Friday, okay? I'm going to do another trim eventually, probably in a couple weeks. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful because some of these medications out here will take you out. Some of these medications I'm finding out can leave women permanently bald. So I just want to thank the Lord for just a little bit of thinning with the medication that I had to take last year. It's almost coming around to a year now. And so I'm thankful that I only had a 30-day dose of that so that I could get my body together, but it thinned my hair out. And so I'm thankful that God allowed me to grow some more hair and for it to thicken back out. And it's going to continue to thicken. Praise God. And I'll be back to my thick, luxurious hair. But right now, I'm doing what I do, which is going through the restorative process. So if you feel like you're in a season of your life where you got something to be restored, just be encouraged in that. Some of us, even especially even as you get older, we were talking about this the other time with women. When you hit 40, you start to pick up a couple of pounds, and I picked up a couple of pounds right around here, but I'm working them off, and it's a day-to-day process, right? Most of our transformation doesn't happen overnight. So we have to go through the processes. Now, yes, salvation is a immediate impact transformation, but we're still in human bodies that are corruptible. Okay, and so because we're in human bodies that are corruptible, we know that one day we're going to put on the incorruptible. But while we're in this flesh suit, we can do what we need to do in order to maintain it, keep it healthy, keep it groomed, right? Keep it looking the way, proper, showing that we have a responsibility to ourselves and also a responsibility to our creator, right? To hold our bodies in sanctification and honor. So you can always ask yourself, is what I'm doing to my body, is what I'm putting in my body indicative of holding myself in sanctification and honor to the Lord? Am I doing things to my body? Am I adding things to my body that's going to be destructive in the long run? What am I doing? All right. So just be encouraged in that. Before we get into our reads today, if you're like me, I have very, very sensitive skin. I actually have sun allergies. I didn't really know black people could be allergic to the sun, but you learn something every day. You learn something new about yourself. So I have sun allergies, and if I'm out in the sun too long without some sort of block on, my lips can swell like to cover up half my face, and it's not a pretty look. So I have learned that I need to do certain things to protect my skin. You all know that I use the vitamin Helio Care, which is really good for skin protection. It's good for if you're dealing with scars on your body, and you want your skin tone to even back out. Try the vitamin Helio Care. All right, it's HELIO Care, Helio Care. All right, and it comes in a yellow and black bottle. But one thing I know that is very helpful for the skin, it's helpful for your lips. It's helpful for there's a thing that can happen with your lips. If you've ever seen people, I know I have experienced it, and I looked it up, where your lips are slightly discolored, or you see sunspots start to come on your lips, and sometimes people's lips may be a little darker. That has to do with how much sun you're taking in. And one way to even that out is to apply a little bit of vitamin E oil to your lips. So, the past couple of weeks, I was looking for something that would not break me out, because I cannot use things that have beeswax really in it. And I have problems with things like Carmex and stuff like that. It actually gives me an allergic reaction. So I was looking for a lip balm, and I said, Lord, I need a lip balm that has sun protection, that's a lip balm, and it has vitamin E. So I went to the store that, everybody talks about up here, called Ulta Beauty. Anybody heard of Ulta? All right, Ulta is supposed to be like, like your one-stop shop of all these beauty products. So I went in there and went all the way to their natural care sections, and they picked something out. It was super expensive, but I said, I'm going to give it a try. So I gave it a try, and it didn't work. Matter of fact, my lips started tingling, and I was like, oh, got to take this off. So I was still praying about it. I was like, Lord, I know there's got to be something out here. I need somebody to have created something that I could be able to put on my lips for the winter, rather than carrying around a tube of vitamin E ointment and only using that, because that's what I was going to resort to. Come to find out, the company that I use for skin treatments, it has been a company that develops things with dermatologists. My dermatologist recommended this to me, and they recommended this line to me. So I went back to the drugstore, Walgreens, and I was looking at their skincare line, and lo and behold, do you see what that says right there? That says, that little, let me see if I can get a close up on it. You can't really see it, but that little tab right there says new. I said, ha, hallelujah. Somebody done heard my plea. So they have actually just come out with this. This is by CeraVe. It is developed by dermatologists, and it is called Healing Lip Balm. And it has a lip protectant sunscreen up to SPF 30, and it has vitamin E in it. Exactly what I was looking for at, let me see, 4 times less than the stuff I paid for that didn't work, that was burning my lips, that I had to bring back to the store for a refund. Isn't the Lord good? Ain't he good? So, for the tangible amount, for the life-giving amount of, I think, $5.99, you can pick up CeraVe. If you are a person who definitely has some issues with like certain makeup products you can't use, certain lip balms and lip glosses break you out, I would try, okay, I'm not a doctor, okay, so don't take this as professional advice, but I'm just telling you that this is on the market now, developed by dermatologists. It's a healing lip balm. It has a sunscreen protected and vitamin E. I tested it on my skin first, just to make sure I didn't have any reaction to it. And then I put it on my lips. I put it underneath my lip gloss. And then days that I just don't want to wear any kind of lip gloss, I can now go out in the wintertime and I'm going to be wearing this. All right. So it keeps your lips from chapping, deals with the sun issue, and the vitamin E is also within it. This is not sponsored, okay? CeraVe doesn't know I'm doing this. Let me just put that out there. Walgreens doesn't know I'm doing this. This is not a paid ad. I'm just telling you what works, especially if you're dealing with sensitivity with your skin or your lips. All right? So, what shall we get into today? Let's start with your score. Your score is, we're on the last chapter in the book because we skipped ahead, and then now we said we're going to come back. Remember, go ahead and share this out. I'm going to share it again with my fellow followers because we're doing the last chapter on student loans. On student loans. Now we know the United States of America is having serious problems with the student loan epidemic. I think they said in a few years, don't quote me, but in a few years, close to almost half of the population, it's getting close to that now, but almost half of the population will be dealing with the fallout of their student loan debt. What is happening is a couple of things. One, people are getting these really, schools are charging lots of money, especially in the private sector for college. Students are getting out and they're not being able to immediately find what we would call a living wage job. And if you can't find a living wage job, then you're not going to be able to pay your basic bills, much less tacking on a monthly student loan bill. All right. And so then what happens is if you go into deferment, you still got interest that's accruing. Okay. And by the time that interest accrues and the person gets out of deferment, it's adding several thousands of dollars to their student loans. Some people left college with $30,000. And by the time 5, 10 years comes along and they're still not really paying off as much as they need to, that student loan can balloon up to $100,000. All right. So if you think about that, you took out a $30,000 loan and 5, 10 years later, you have $100,000 in debt. And maybe you're making $30,000 a year. Well, what does that mean? That means with your job, you're never going to get out of that debt. All right. And we know that because it is a federal loan, it cannot be put under bankruptcy. So some people think, well, if I file for bankruptcy, can I get out of it? No. Because it's considered a federal debt. So they need to work out what they're going to do. Much of this stuff, they just need to go ahead and forgive, just to be honest, because they're finding out all of the different nefarious things that happen with student loans, what happened with some of the loan companies, what happened with Sallie Mae. So some of this just needs to be a clean slate for a lot of people. And I remember a couple years back that they did that. They began to forgive credit card loans. And a lot of people got angry about that because how are you forgiving credit card loans, which is something that's a luxury, okay, that had no educational benefit and value to it, but you're refusing to forgive student loans. So there's a whole lot of debate around that. Also, I just recently read a new article about how people are escaping their student loans by leaving the country and just refusing to pay them altogether. They're just like, man, forget it. I can't even make a standard living in America to even start to pay on loans. So some people have actually just left the country. They've gotten a livable wage job in another country. They're living well. And they're like, I'm not thinking about my student loans. Now, the smart thing would have been go to another country, get another job, earn lots of money, and then start paying off your student loans over here, so you just won't have debt waiting on you when you return to the States. But people are just like, they're fed up. And so I said, well, if people get wind of this as an idea, they're going to start denying visas and passports to people who have student loan debt, because if you're going to escape it and you're not leaving to go earn an income or whatever, then yeah, they're probably going to stop you from leaving the country. Good morning, love. How are you? So let's get into higher education, navigating the school loan landscape. I'm going to ask that if you have student loans, don't put any comments up here saying, yes, I have student loans. Don't tell us your amount. We don't want any of your private information floating around social media, okay? But what you can do is you can take notes about what we're talking about. You can plug those notes up there, all right? But I don't want your private information floating on the screen. So please do not put up any of your personal information about student loans, all right? Everybody good? Okay. So we're starting the topic, navigating the school loan landscape. And because this book is fairly new, it's going to be applicable to now, but we know that more things are coming into play as they try to figure out what to do with student loan debt. All right. So keep that in mind. That information about this topic is continually being updated because things are being litigated right now. All right. The word bubble is a popular concept these days in the media. It's often used to describe an economic situation where the underlying fundamentals cause a painful contraction in the market. In the early 2000s, we saw it in the stock market with dot-com companies that were on the bubble, and then again in the housing market with subprime loan crash. These days, if you're looking for the biggest bubble of the 2010s, student loans are probably the best place to start. Why? Because the total student loan tab in the United States is more than $1.5 trillion. That's double the outstanding amount on every credit card in America consumer's wallet or purse, and 500 million more than the outstanding balance on every car loan currently issued. That's 1.5 trillion, and that number is a scary figure. But what's even scarier is that students have racked up that debt in one of the most favorable borrowing environments in history, at least in terms of interest rates. If you borrowed money in the last 10 years, you did it at historically low rates. It wasn't uncommon to lock in rates between 3 and 4% for federally subsidized undergraduate school loans in 2013 and in 2014. As anybody who has locked in a mortgage during that time knows, rates have only gone up since then. And it is likely that we're going to see an extended period of interest rate increase over the next 5 to 10 years. True, the interest rate you pay on your student loans is usually locked in from the time you signed up for the loan, but every new loan being written is coming at a higher and higher rate. And the ability to refinance loans at historically low rates is probably gone for at least a decade. That means that more students are going to come out of school with larger student loan bills than ever before, and with the rising cost of tuition and interest, they'll be paying more towards those loans than ever before. Students graduating with a bachelor's degree in 2016 came out with an average of more than $31,000 in student debt. If those payments are not deferred, that means a person with an entry-level job is going to be paying at least $320 a month on a school loan for 10 years. It doesn't take a degree in math to see that not much has to go wrong for that person who is making $25,000 or $30,000 a year to really struggle to pay off that college loan debt. And that debt load is a huge reason why borrowing among people ages 25 and under is at levels we haven't seen since the 1940s. Look at it this way. If you're taking home, $19,000 on a $25,000 salary after taxes, you have about $1,600 a month to pay for your entire life. After rent, cable, internet, money for food, there isn't much left. And many people are getting hit with student loan reality years after they graduate when they hit a bump in the unemployment road. All of a sudden, their income stream isn't what it was, and they begin to fall behind on payments. With almost 50 million Americans holding some kind of school debt, and that number growing by 10% every year, it is an issue that is in this country that isn't going to go away. And they forgot in that $1,600 a month, if you have a car note, which most people do coming out of college still, if you have a car note, you might want to add that in too. College tuition is going up much faster than salaries are, and the interest rates aren't going to help you out as much as they have. Which means if you have student loans now, you need a good strategy to figure out how to handle the debt load and restructure your payments if you need more breathing room. Now, what recently happened was they found out through investigation that everybody that was calling in to restructure their payments or to see if they qualified for loan forgiveness for part of their loans, that 99.9% of those people were denied and they should not have been. So now that is another big brouhaha because people are like, now I have to go back and try to reapply and try to figure out, have they fixed the problem? Because as of this moment, they haven't fixed the problem. Okay. So let's start with some student loan basics. If you've been through the process, you already know the drill. The sticker price on average for a year of college tuition, room and board in 2016 was $20,000 for in-state public schools, $35,000 for public out-of-state schools, and $45,000 a year for private schools. Unless you are lucky to have parents who can write a big check, you're going to have to cover those costs with a combination of either scholarships and student loans, or scholarships, student loans, and grants. Student loans come in two broad forms: federal loans and private loans. Federal loans like Stafford, Perkins, and William D. Ford direct loans are administered by the U.S. government either through funding directly from the government or by being guaranteed by the government and issued by a bank or school. And they don't rely on the student or parent's credit score, income, or grades. Private loans are offered by banks and credit unions, and they're subject to all the same rules and restrictions the lender would require for any other loan. In most cases, a younger student would need a parent to co-sign for the loan because they wouldn't have established credit or income to cover the payments. Students going to school later in life will probably also need a co-signer in the form of a spouse or significant other if their income is going to be affected by going to school. Federal loans come in two flavors: subsidized and unsubsidized. This is important, especially if you are a parent and you have a child that is going off to college next year. Pay attention. Subsidized loans are determined by a need-based formula, and the interest payments are covered by the government while the student is in school, as well as for a 6-month window after graduation. You need to be an undergraduate student enrolled for at least half of a full course or full course load of credit. So if your school has 15 credit hours as a full course load, you need to be enrolled for at least 7 or 8 in order to qualify for a subsidized loan. Unsubsidized loans are available to undergraduate and graduate students regardless of need, and they require the student to pay the interest on the loan starting immediately. Once the student graduates, they then begin to make the principal payments. To get a federal loan, you fill out the complicated set of financial paperwork through your soon-to-be college that measures how much you and your family can be expected to contribute toward your undergraduate education. Now, if you're like many children who live in the hood who are going to college for the first time, whose parents are working class or what do they call it? Work or underworked. Many times when you fill that out, your expected contribution towards your undergraduate education was zero. You can also qualify for federal student loans for graduate school. If you don't have much income or you have a bunch of siblings in school at the same time, you're going to register more need than a student with more family income or fewer expenses. At the end of that process, you will find out how much in federal student loans you're eligible to take out, and that number will depend on your year in school, and the dollar amount is changed by Congress periodically, and whether or not you can be claimed as a dependent by your parents. Those loans are chopped up into a variety of subsidized and unsubsidized programs. For example, if you are a freshman and you have no family income to contribute and are supported by your parents, you might qualify for the full $9,500 in federal and federally backed loans with a maximum of $3,500 in subsidized loans. By the time you are a senior, you can qualify for up to $12,500, of which $5,500 can be subsidized. The current cap on loans are a total of $31,000, which 23,000 can be subsidized. If your parents don't qualify for a particular loan program that allows them to borrow for you, you can receive up to $57,500 for college. We're going to talk about co-signers and co-borrowers later in this chapter. The interest rates for the various federal and federally backed loans are also set by Congress. Right now, they range between about 4 and 6%. But as I said earlier, we're nearing historic lows in interest rates, and those numbers are probably going to go up in the next year. You can do math, so it's obvious that $18,000 doesn't cover all the costs of going to school. To make up the difference, you would either need to come up with scholarship money, get a job, or go through a bank or credit union to take out a private loan. Private loans are different than federal loans in that they're backed by the banking institution and its investors, not the government. Federal loans have some significant advantages over private loans, but that comes with a very significant caveat. Federal loans almost always have lower interest rates than private loans, and the federal loan programs are much more flexible about renegotiating the terms of your loans down the road if you run into a hardship. But if you default on a federal loan, you're automatically disqualified for virtually any other federally backed loan program, which includes many mortgages for first-time home buyers. You also cannot escape federal school loans through bankruptcy. They're going to be with you until you pay them off. We're actually reaching the point where people are carrying school loan debt into retirement. The government had to make rules establishing that your Social Security benefits can now be garnished up to 15% of the monthly total if you go into default. So literally, these student loans follow you your entire life until you pay them off. The Government Accountability Office found that students who got to retirement with student loan debt carried a balance approximately of $10,000 on average and ended up having to pay about $140 out of their monthly benefits. So yes, you read that right. Some borrowers have refinanced and pushed their payments so far down the line that they still have a student loan balance when they get to their retirement age. Private loans can be defaulted upon and cleared through a bankruptcy, which means the lenders charge more in interest to price that risk. Rates for private loans come in at around 9 to 12%, 5 to 6 points higher than federal or federally backed loans. On a $10,000 loan with a 10-year term, that's a difference of about $25 a month. But the good side is that if you have to file for bankruptcy, that loan will be covered under it. Committing to a series of student loans is a lot like signing up for a mortgage. You have to do a fair bit of predicting the future, which can be scary. For a mortgage, you have to figure out if you can afford the payments over the long term and if the amount of money you're borrowing is worth the house you're getting in return. School loans actually work the same way. I think that personally, they need a course in high school, your senior year, to teach you about student loans, because a lot of people do not understand the process of student loans. A lot of people take out more than they need, right? I know that there are some students that have wised up to that, that if they give you more than you actually need on the loan, to actually hold on to those funds, so that once you graduate and say you can't find that perfect job you're looking for, you already have the extra of your loans amounts already in the bank, so you can start paying that loan off. All right, so there's ways to get around that. But I really do think there needs to be more financial education about school loans before students sign on the dotted line. You have to make an estimate about your earning potential when you graduate and decide if the weight of your student loans are going to be covered by your potential income stream. So, say you went into a particular field, but when you got out of school, all right, which is why some schools take you through a vocational career planning session that a lot of students don't like to go through, but I taught it for 5 years, so I know what I'm talking about. We take you through a potential income stream process, and we take you through a career selection process to help you to understand, according to technological projections, what jobs are going to be needed in the future. Why would you go into a field that by the time you get out and you graduate, the number of people needed for that field is going to significantly decrease? That means that you're already going to pick a profession and pick a field to go into that is going to be potentially obsolete by the time you graduate college. So you have to get students to think about that, to work through that, to process that. And if they still want to go into that field, then they need to be figuring out how they're going to be an employer as opposed to an employee, right? So these are the things that need to be understood and worked out. And as they said, you're going to need to try to figure out, will my potential income cover the loans that I may want to take out? And if my income doesn't cover those loans, what would I do about it? How would I pay or begin to start paying on my student loans? All right. And so I know that's a lot for high schoolers to start thinking about, but 5, 10 years down the line after they graduate from college, they're going to wish they had that conversation. All right. So he says here, I'm not making any judgments about a degree in journalism or art history, but those fields offer lower starting salaries than fields like electrical engineering or human resources. So it's even with teaching. So if you take out a loan or you go to a prestigious college or university for your education degree, and your starting salary is nowhere near your student loans, you're already starting out at a disadvantage. As just the bottom line. And so you have to think about, if I know I'm going to be starting at a disadvantage in terms of paying off my loans, what can I be doing now to secure funding, to be putting money in savings so that I can start off repaying right at the jump? And that is the part that people miss right after they get out of college. They start looking for employment. Many times they find a entry level job, and then they start struggling with student loan payments. All right. So you want to be, if you're in college now or you're coming out next year or two, you need to be thinking about that now. How can I begin to secure funding? How can I begin to be putting aside more? Maybe that means putting off entertainment for a while so you can start building your bank, so that before you get out of college, and maybe you don't have lined up what you want yet, you can still be making your student loan payments and not fall behind. The website salary.com does a good job giving you rough estimates about starting salaries for various professions. What many students end up with after 4 or 5 years of undergraduate work or more, if you tack on a graduate degree, is a patchwork of loans serviced by a variety of different providers, loan servicing companies contracted by the U.S. Department of Education, or the private bank or credit union you use to get a loan. One of the biggest initial stumbling blocks for students fresh out of school, believe it or not, is keeping an accurate tally of what they owe and who to pay. Add in the normal transition to a different address away from school, maybe moving to a different state, and the distractions that come with jumping into the work world, and it's easy to see how plenty of students get into a hole almost immediately. The first step is to come up with a complete roster of the student loans you owe. You have a few different avenues to pull this information together. You can call the financial aid office at your school. You can pull a copy of your credit report to see your list of creditors. You can also work through the National Student Loan Data System, the official clearinghouse for all federal and federally backed loans. It's a good idea to go to all three sources to make sure the information matches up and go through the process of unifying the information if there are any mistakes. You can use the strategies in Chapter 4 to make sure the information on your credit report is accurate. The National Student Loan Data System gets its information from your schools, which makes it really useful if you're accumulated loans while studying at more than one college and university. When you first move into the real world, you have to start paying on those loans, and it can come as a shock. The dollar figures on the loans can seem almost like monopoly money when you're signing for them. And because they don't come due in what seems like a long way into the future, maybe 4 to 8 years, they're much more abstract to you than they are real. But handling those student loans correctly from the beginning is extremely important because for most young people, those loans represent the vast majority of their credit history. In other words, you come out of school with very little exposure to the world of consumer credit. If you're trying to get a job or even sign up for your own cell phone plan, you're going to get your credit pulled. If the only thing creditors or potential employers see is a bunch of missed and delinquent payments right from the get-go, you're going to have problems securing other forms and means of credit and also material goods. So, that is the beginning of our section on student loans. We will continue that next Friday. Remember, invite a friend in because guess what? 50% of the population is dealing with student loans. So 1 out of 2 of your friends needs to hear this broadcast. All right. Let's take a look at Wealth Can't Wait. Avoiding 7 wealth traps, implementing the 7 business pillars, and completing a life audit today. Short chapter here, chapter 14, and it is Think I Am. Wayne Dyer says, the more you see yourself as what you'd like to become and act as if what you want is already there, the more you'll activate those dormant forces that will collaborate to transform your dream into your reality. There is a world of difference between thinking and saying I can or I will, which actually lacks power. Those are not power-packed statements. And thinking and saying I am, I have, and it is, which are very power-packed. So, I am beautiful. I have wealth. It is so. It is important to choose your thoughts about yourself wisely. I always call this, many of you who have coached with me before know that I call this your self-talk. What is it that you're saying to yourself? And when you say it, are you looking your own self in the eye? So when you get up in the morning, are you talking to yourself? Are you looking your own self in the mirror? You'd be surprised how many people get up in the morning, brush their hair, brush their teeth, and sometimes even put on their makeup without a mirror, because some people are just used to the contours of their face and they know where everything is. But when you get up in the morning, you need to look yourself in the eye, you need to look yourself in the face, and you need to begin to talk to yourself. Because guess what? The words you say to yourself really do have the greatest impact on your day. And I don't care how encouraging other people are, their words will not do more for you than your own words will. So if you haven't been talking to yourself, starting this weekend, I want you to get up in the morning and I want you to begin to talk to yourself. Talk to yourself about your day. Talk to yourself about your appearance. Talk to yourself about your faith. Talk to yourself about your belief and your confidence in God. Talk to yourself about the kind of day you're going to have. Notice I didn't say command. I just said talk to yourself. Ask God, what is he saying about your day? What does he want you to know about yourself? There's plenty in the word that God says about us as his people, but what is God saying specifically about you? The writer says, I am is the most powerful phrase in our language. Dr. Wayne Dyer says this. He says, you can redefine your self-concept by choosing which words to use after I am. Like most things, this power cuts both ways. Add the word not to the sentence, and it can be just as devastating as it is powerful. For example, I can say, I am worthy to be treated like a queen. Or I could say, I am not worthy to be treated like a queen. And guess what? Jesus already told us, you shall have whatsoever you say. Right? This is something I would tell my students all the time. When they would get into arguments, they would come into my classroom. Maybe they had an argument with their parent, and they would go on and on and on about what their parent was saying about them and saying they were being irresponsible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would say, well, what are you saying about yourself? Well, my mom and my daddy think I do this, da 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 da, and they always fussing. What are you saying about yourself? And it would make them stop and pause and say, what am I saying about myself? And then, furthermore, what do you believe about yourself? And are you exhibiting that to your parents? Well, they think this about me. What do you think about yourself, and are you exhibiting it to your parents? Because I guarantee you, if you change what you see about yourself and you begin to speak over yourself, regardless of what your parents are saying, eventually your parents are going to see what you see about yourself. And their conversation about you is going to start changing. Why? Because you are now changing what you say and what you think and what you believe about yourself. And now it's starting to manifest in your actions. And now your parents see your actions changing. And your parents will start changing what they see in you that they've been saying. And it worked every single time. And so I've had students come back and say, you know, once I started changing what I saw in myself, I started acting different. And then I noticed my parents stopped talking to me about stuff that I wish they wouldn't be talking to me about. And then they realized, well, maybe my parents did see something in me. And then maybe they realized that they thought that the more they told me what they saw in me that was negative, that was going to make me change. But that didn't make me change. What made me change was what I saw about myself. All right? And again, this is just universal. People are only going to see in you really what you're producing. And what you're producing comes out of what you're thinking. And what you're thinking oftentimes comes out of this here, your mouth. And so if you think you're not worthy, guess what? Your conversation is going to start matching that thought. All right? If you think you're not capable, if you think that about yourself, your conversation will begin to match what you think about yourself. And so a lot of times we don't realize that we're projecting our essence by what we're thinking and then by eventually what comes out of our mouth. And many people say that like attracts like. So if you think you're not capable, guess what? You're going to start attracting people who aren't capable either. If you think you're not worthy, guess what? You're going to start attracting people who think they're not worthy either. And then you're going to wind up in relationships with people who are a manifestation of what you've been projecting. And again, I'm going to say it again, because your projection of who you are comes from what you think about yourself and what you say. All right? Every morning I get up, I say I am a genius. And God is going to release genius ideas to me. I don't need good ideas right now. I need genius ideas that produce wealth. So that's what I speak. That's what I believe. I believe that God is generating his ideas out of my brain and out of my mind. I believe that he has given me the gift of genius. I believe that I can call forth the genius out of other people and pull it out. So again, your thought process about yourself plus what you say about yourself equals the manifestation in your environment. And that is not in this book, but it is absolutely what I believe. For example, when speaking to a child, it is critical to avoid saying things like, and I'm going to, parents. I can't tell you how many esteems I've had to correct of children because of what parents have said. Parents, you are the holder of the seed that came out of you. Think about it as like a plant, okay? God gifted you with a child, and that child is a seed. You can plant that seed in good ground and watch it flourish and water it and put it in sunlight and watch it grow. Or you can plant that seed in the bad ground of your criticisms and negativity and water that, and that's going to grow. All right? So he says here, it is critical to avoid saying things to a child like, this subject gets me because I have seen children wrecked by words. Saying things to them like, you are bad. You are a brat. You are impatient. No. What could I say? You have done something that is not good. That's totally different from taking the essence of a child and saying you are bad. There's a difference in saying you are bad versus, Johnny, you have done something bad. One is associating the behavior with the thing, the character with the thing, and the other one is associating the character with the essence of the person. Because if Johnny is bad, then that means that no matter what Johnny does, Johnny is bad. Not that Johnny does bad things, but that he himself is bad. Instead, you could say, you are being impatient, not you are impatient. In this essence, in this moment, in this thing, whether it's wanting a toy or wanting to have their way or not wanting to wait on something to be given to them, you now take away it from being a part of their character and their nature to simply being something they need to work on. So rather than saying you are impatient, you are being impatient. Words matter. The former effects of a child's self-concept, the former affects their self-concept But when you insert being into the sentence, you're referring to their present tense behavior rather than an immutable character flaw. I'm going to say it again for the parents in the back. You got to change the way that you're talking to your children. You do. Somebody's going to say, well, you don't have children. How can you tell me that? Jesus didn't have children, but he sure gave some wisdom on it. Jesus was never married, but he sure gave some wisdom on it. So you can hear the wisdom, or you can continue to destroy your child's character. All right? So you want to change how you're speaking to your children. Likewise, this is also true for adults. Remove negative self-talk and modify how you are addressing others, and it will have a huge impact. It will. Remaining positive doesn't mean that you cannot hold yourself or other people accountable. For example, if you miss a deadline, you can say, I am better than that. I am a dependable person. I can meet a deadline. I need to do better. And then you actually work on doing better and not missing your deadlines. So it doesn't mean that you don't hold people accountable for the negative, but it does mean that you change the way that you speak about it and that you don't attach it to the character of a person. You learn how to separate a behavior from a character flaw. Because if you don't, I'm telling you, if you're walking around and all your son or daughter hears is, let me give me a name, bonquisha. It's one of my favorite words, by the way. If all bonquisha hears is, bonquisha is so fast. Bonquisha is so arrogant. Bonquisha is prideful. Bonquisha is, she just gets on my nerves, right? If you're putting out all of this negative energy towards Bonquisha, then guess what Bonquisha is going to produce? Because that's what you're watering. That's what you're watering. But if you say, Bonquisha, I notice that you become very prideful when you do X, Y, Z. That's different than saying that as a whole, she's a prideful person. Again, referring to the present tense behavior rather than putting an immutable, unchangeable character flaw on a person. The Apostle Paul behaved in a manner that caused several Christians to be murdered. Did Paul remain a murderer? No. But at some point, he was met by Christ on the road to Damascus. And notice, Christ didn't even call him a murderer. He said, Paul, why do you kick against the pricks? And he was like, Lord, what you mean? Jesus was like, you're coming up against me. I'm the one who commissioned them to go do this. Go and read that account of Paul in Acts 9 and listen to how Jesus spoke to Paul, stopped him in his tracks, and never called him a murderer. Think about that. All right. So even Jesus, with something as horrible as what Paul was doing, even Jesus recognized that it was a present tense behavior and not an immutable character flaw. Why do we know that? Because Paul went on to deliver the gospel truth and save thousands of lives. All right. Again, we can say things to ourselves. We can tell the truth to ourselves. We can say, I am better than that. We can say, this is beneath me. This is beneath what I'm capable of. This is beneath my standards. We can say to ourselves, I will do better next time because I have the ability to do better. And when creating boundaries with people or correcting problem behaviors, we can say, I would like for you to work on X, Y, and Z. This is not your character. These are things I need you to work on. Or we can also say, your behavior is not acceptable to me. It is not okay to do X, Y, and Z. Again, is referring to the present tense behavior and not making it a character trait of the person. So I could go around and I could say, this person is mean, this person is nasty, this person is arrogant, or I could say, this person does mean things, this person acts in a nasty manner, and that takes it out of being that person's very nature and very character. And so now I can begin to isolate, what is it that makes you act out and become mean? What is it that makes you act with a nasty attitude? That becomes a present tense behavior rather than saying this is who they are, because that's what we do to people. Oh my gosh, that's what we do to people. The moment someone upsets us, or the moment someone offends us, we say they're prideful. And we write people off. We write people off completely because we have taken their present tense behavior and we have attributed it and applied it to their entire character. And we write people off and we never see the true person because they acted in a way that displeased us one time. All you gotta do for many people is one time act in a way that displeases them, and they will completely write you off, and they will say that that's who you are. And raise your hand if you hate when people do that to you. Raise your hand. Just put a little hand up there, little hand icon. That gets on my nerves because the same grace that you would want if you messed up and you would want somebody to give you another chance so you can show that that's not who I am 99% of the time. You just caught me on a bad day. And they will, yes, prophet, and they will hold that opinion of you for years because they took a present tense, a present time behavior and applied it across the board to your whole character. And then on top of that, they will go around and tell other people that that's who you are. But you want to forgive and give grace to them for everything. Yep. All right. So let's work on giving people. This is a life principle of mine. I tell people there's a difference between character flaws and a bad day. Awesome. Powerful truth. This is a life principle of mine. When I realized that I was not giving people the same grace that I wanted afforded to me, that was one of the most life-changing moments of my personal life. And I made up in my mind that Father God, help me to give people the grace in a situation that I would want given to me. When I started doing that, and I started putting myself in the position of that person, and I started realizing, wait a minute, if this was me, what kind of grace would I want somebody to give me in this situation? I started to look at things a little bit differently. We can apply this even when people sin against us, when people sin against the community, when people sin against God, because ultimately that's the main person they're sinning against. All right. I'm going to try to give them the same measure of grace that I would want given to me. And we're talking about people who are repentant. All right. We're not just saying people who just want to be repeat offenders and they don't care. We're talking about people who want a second chance. Are we as gracious to them as we would want people to be to us? Lastly, Wealth Accelerator today. We all make mistakes, whether large, like missing an important deadline, or small, like forgetting to put more money in a parking meter. Instead of reacting by using negative self talk, replace it with positive yet accountable talk. You miss paying a bill on time, you get a second notice, and you're not like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that I totally forgot to pay it, right? You don't go around talking to yourself saying, man, I am a low down, dirty bum. I am undependable. No, you say, man, I usually pay that on time. It totally slipped my mind. Lord, help me to do better. Help me to remember. Put it in your little calendar or whatever, your phone, your digital calendar, so you'll remember next time. And you move on about your day, right? Hopefully, you move on about your day. And that you don't get stuck in negative self-talk. You don't get stuck in beating yourself up. Why? Because again, you are in humanity, and humans make mistakes. They do. They make mistakes. We all do. But we want to learn from the mistakes. We don't want to keep making them over and over again. So that means once I get done with my self-talk, once I change what I say about the situation, then I need to take an action step to make sure I'm making less and less mistakes. This is what I learned about life. I learned that most of life is about learning how to make less and less mistakes. That's life simplified. How can I make less and less mistakes? How can I love more and more people? How can I not take everything personally and understand that everybody is in the process of humanity and humanhood just like I am? And how can I give grace as much as I would like grace given to me on any given day? And what I am learning is that whatever you put out into the world, as the Lord said to me a couple months back, he said, this is the season of the boomerang. He said, be careful what you put out into the world because it will come back to you swiftly. And so I'm learning that if I don't want somebody to yell at me, I'm not going to be yelling at people. If I don't want somebody to cut me off on the road, I'm not going to be cutting other people off on the road. If I want somebody to help me out when I'm a couple of dollars or some change short in the grocery store line, then guess what? When I have it and the person in front of me doesn't, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to reach over and I'm going to say, here you go. I did that the other day, and the guy was like totally flabbergasted. He was like, nobody ever does this for me. I'm like, well, here's something for you. And guess what? All you got to do is pay it forward. Just keep paying it forward. You want kindness? Sow kindness. You want love? Sow love. You want friends? Make yourself more friendlier. All right. Lastly, if you do not have this book in your library and you are looking to improve your scores, I'm going to encourage you to get this book for your personal library. If you say January 2019, I'm going to make it a part of my 2019 goals to get my credit in order, to learn how to play the game, because it is a game. But unfortunately, we live in this country, and so you got to know how to play the game. All right? I've already gotten several testaments, all right, of people's credit score jumping 20, 50, 70 points by just using this process, and it's only been a couple of months. I can tell you from my own life that God has opened up some financial doors. We're not going to take advantage of them, but God has certainly opened up some financial doors by simply us following the process. We like to live, my family likes to live personally with cash. But because we've been following the process, other things are starting to open. All right. So I encourage you, this is one of the books that I know works because we've been trying what the author has recommended, and it is actually opening doors. All right. So this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for giving me an extra $5 in 10, 11, 12 seconds today. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so please go out today and be light. Early voting, I know in the DMV area ends today. So if you want to get your early vote in, get your early vote in. And I will be on Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, Eastern Standard Time. Anybody have any closing questions? I'll take one question before I get off today. No questions for me? All right. If you came in late, make sure you rewind and listen to my talk about what to do with your lip care and your skin care for the winter. All right. Take care and God bless.